The sun burned like fire in the endless blue sky above the Kalahari Desert. Sand dunes stretched as far as the eye could see, rolling like frozen waves of gold and orange. No water existed here, no plants grew, no animals lived. This was a place where life came to die. High above the burning sands, a shadow moved across the desert floor. The shadow was huge and dark, with wings that spread wider than any building. It belonged to Ryukin, the last dragon of the ancient world. Ryukin had been flying over this desert for 3,000 years. Every day he made the same journey, watching over the empty lands below. His scales were deep blue like the ocean, and they shimmered in the harsh sunlight. His eyes were golden, and they could see things that human eyes could never see. For 3,000 years, nothing had changed in this desert. The same sand, the same heat, the same endless silence. Ryukin had grown used to the emptiness. He expected nothing different today, but today was different. As Ryukin flew over a cluster of broken stone buildings, something caught his attention. Far below, near the ruins of what had once been a great city, a small dark spot lay on the sand. At first, Ryukin thought it might be a rock or a piece of old wood. But as he circled lower, his sharp eyes saw something that made his heart skip a beat. It was a person. A human girl. She lay face down on the burning sand, completely still. Her long black hair was spread around her head like a dark fan. She wore strange clothes that seemed to shimmer even in the harsh light. Around her neck, something glowed with a soft blue light. Ryukin had not seen a human in over 1,000 years. The last humans in this desert had died long ago, before even his grandfather's grandfather had been born. What was this girl doing here? How had she come to this place where nothing lived? The dragon circled lower, his massive wings beating slowly. The girl did not move. She did not respond to the shadow that covered her or the wind from his wings. Ryukin could see that she was hurt. Her clothes were torn. Dark stains that looked like blood marked the sand around her. She was dying. Without thinking, Ryukin landed on the sand near the girl. His huge claws dug deep furrows in the ground. Up close, he could see that she was very young, maybe 20 years old. Her skin was pale from heat and pain. Her breathing was so weak that Ryukin had to listen carefully to hear it, but there was something else about her that made Ryukin's ancient heart race. The thing around her neck was not just glowing. It was pulsing with a rhythm like a heartbeat. And the light it gave off was not ordinary light. It was magic, old magic. Magic that Ryukin had not felt in over 1,000 years. The girl's clothes were covered with strange symbols. They were not painted or sewn on. They seemed to be part of the fabric itself, glowing faintly with the same blue light as her necklace. Ryukin recognized these symbols. They belonged to the ethereal people, the ancient civilization that had once ruled this desert before they vanished from the world, but that was impossible. The ethereal people had been gone for over 1,000 years. Ryukin had watched their great cities crumble into dust. He had seen their last descendants die of old age centuries ago. There should be no one left who could wear their sacred symbols, yet here was this girl, wearing the clothes of the ancient ones and carrying their magic. Ryukin knew he had to act quickly. The desert sun would kill the girl in minutes if he did not help her. Very carefully, he reached out with one massive claw. His claws were longer than swords and sharper than knives, but he had learned long ago how to be gentle with small, fragile things. He scooped the girl up as carefully as a mother bird lifting her chick. She was so light that he barely felt her. Wait. Her body was burning hot with fever, and her breathing was getting weaker by the moment. The dragon spread his wings and pushed off from the sand. With powerful beats, he rose into the air, carrying the mysterious girl away from the killing heat of the desert floor. He flew toward his home in the mountains, where cool caves and fresh water waited. As they flew, Ryukin looked down at the girl cradled in his claws. Her face was peaceful now, as if she were simply sleeping, but her skin was too pale and her breathing too shallow. She needed help that only ancient magic could provide. The dragon's home was built into the side of a tall mountain at the edge of the desert. Caves had been carved deep into the rock, connected by tunnels that glowed with soft crystal light. This had been Rukin's home for 3,000 years. Here he kept the treasures and knowledge of ages past. Rukin landed on a wide ledge outside the main cave. Very gently he carried the girl inside to a chamber filled with healing crystals. The crystals had been gifts from the ethereal people long ago, and they still held the power to heal wounds and cure sickness. The dragon placed the girl on a bed of soft moss that grew around the healing crystals. Immediately the crystals began to glow brighter, responding to her presence. Blue and green light filled the chamber, and the air itself seemed to hum with ancient power. Rukin began to work, the healing magic that he had learned over his long life. He breathed gently on the girl, and his breath carried healing power that sank into her skin. He touched her forehead with the tip of one claw, sending warm energy through her body to fight the fever and heal her wounds. As he worked, the pendant around her neck grew brighter. The symbols on her clothes began to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. And slowly, very slowly, her breathing became stronger and more regular. But even as Rukin healed her body, questions filled his mind. Who was this girl? Where had she come from? How did she carry the magic of the ancient ethereal people? And most important of all, why was she here in this desert where nothing had lived for 1,000 years? The dragon settled down to wait and watch over his mysterious guest. Outside, the desert sun continued to burn, but here in the cool caves, surrounded by ancient magic, the girl was safe. When she woke up, Rukin would have his answers. For the first time in 1,000 years, the dragon was not alone. 3 days passed in the mountain caves. The healing crystals glowed softly around the sleeping girl, their light never fading. Rukin stayed close, watching over her with the patience that only an ancient dragon could have. He ate little and slept even less. Something deep inside told him that this girl was important in ways he did not yet understand. On the morning of the 4th day, the girl's eyes opened. They were dark brown, like rich earth after rain. At first they were confused and frightened. She tried to sit up quickly, but her body was still weak from her ordeal in the desert. She fell back against the soft moss, breathing hard. Her eyes darted around the crystal cave until they found Rukin. The dragon was sitting nearby, his huge form filling half the chamber. His golden eyes watched her with gentle curiosity. Most humans would have screamed at the sight of him. But this girl was different. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, to Rukin's surprise, she spoke in words he had not heard for over 1,000 years. "Great guardian of the ancient pact," she said in the old language of the ethereal people, "I greet you in the name of the sacred bloodline." Rukin's eyes widened. No one had spoken those words to him since the last days of the ethereal civilization. His voice rumbled like distant thunder when he answered in the same ancient tongue. "Child of the old blood," he said. "You speak the words of the vanished ones, but how can this be? The ethereal people are gone from this world." The girl struggled to sit up again. This time she managed it, though her hands shook with effort. The pendant around her neck pulsed with blue light, and the symbols on her clothes grew brighter. "My name is Minji," she said, switching to the common human language that Rukin also knew. "I am the daughter of Sunho, son of Doyun, keeper of the ancient ways. I am the last guardian of the ethereal bloodline." She paused, looking down at her hands. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with sadness. "I am the last of my people, the very last." Rukin felt something cold settle in his chest. He had suspected this might be true, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. The ethereal people, who had once filled the desert with their great cities and powerful magic, were gone. Only this young girl remained. "Tell me, child," Rukin said gently. "How did you come to be in the desert? Why were you alone in that place of death?" Minji's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. Instead, she took a deep breath and began to tell her story. "My grandfather Doyun raised me," she said. "He was the guardian before me, and his father before him, going back through the generations. We have kept the ancient knowledge alive even as our people faded away." She touched the pendant around her neck. It was made of crystal that seemed to hold trapped starlight. "This is the heart of binding," she said. "It has been passed down through my family for 1,000 years. It is the key to the most important duty of our people." "What duty?" Ryukin asked, though he was beginning to remember things he had tried to forget. Minji's voice became very serious. "We guard the prison of the Void Empress Nara. We keep her locked away so she cannot devour the worlds of the living." The name hit Ryukin like a physical blow. Memories flooded back to him. The Great War. The darkness spreading across the stars. The terrible choice that the ethereal people had made to save all life in the galaxy. "The seals," he whispered, "the binding spells that hold her." "Yes," Minji said. "Every 100 years, a guardian must go to the prison and renew the seals. The ritual takes great power and knowledge. It also takes time. I was performing the 100-year renewal when something went wrong." She looked down at her hands again. This time, a single tear did fall. "The magic was too strong for me alone," she said. "In the old days, there were many guardians to share the burden, but now there is only me. The ritual almost killed me, and I fear it was not completed properly." Ryukin's mind raced. He remembered the great crystal prison deep beneath the desert city. He remembered the terrible thing that was locked inside it. And he remembered his own role in creating that prison so long ago. "Show me your arms," he said suddenly. Minji looked confused, but she rolled up her sleeves. Her arms were covered with intricate tattoos that seemed to move and shift in the crystal light. They were not ordinary tattoos. They were living magic, carved into her skin with tools blessed by the ancient powers. Ryukin studied the tattoos carefully. They told the story of the guardian bloodline, but they also showed something else. The magic in them was fading. Some of the symbols were already growing dim. "Child," he said softly, "how long has it been since the last proper renewal?" Minji hesitated. 300 years, she admitted. "My great-great-grandfather was the last to complete the full ritual. Since then, we have only been able to perform partial renewals, each one weaker than the last." Horror filled Ryukin's heart. 300 years of weakening seals. 300 years of the Void Empress growing stronger while her prison grew weaker. "We must go to the prison," he said, rising to his feet. "We must see how much damage has been done." "I tried," Minji said, "but I am too weak. The journey through the desert nearly killed me. And even if I reach the city, I cannot perform the full ritual alone. It requires 2 guardians, one to channel the power and one to anchor the spell." Ryukin looked down at the young girl who carried such a terrible burden. She was brave, he could see that. But she was also alone and afraid. The weight of her responsibility was crushing her. "You are not alone anymore," he said. "I was there. When the prison was built, I helped create the binding spells. I am bound by ancient oaths to protect the guardian bloodline." He moved closer to her, his massive head lowering until his golden eyes were level with hers. "I am Ryukin, last dragon of the old world, sworn protector of the ethereal people. I have been waiting for 3,000 years for a guardian to call upon me. You are that guardian, Minji of the ancient blood, and I will help you save the world." Minji stared at him with wonder. For the first time since she had awakened, hope flickered in her dark eyes. "You remember," she whispered. "You remember the old pact." "I remember everything," Ryukin said. "And I remember my duty. Rest now, young guardian. Tomorrow we will go to the desert city. Together we will see what can be done to strengthen the seals." As Minji lay back down among the healing crystals, she felt something she had not felt. In years, she was no longer alone. The ancient dragon would help her. Perhaps there was still hope for the world after all, but deep in her heart, she wondered if they would be strong enough to face what awaited them in the buried city, the void. Empress had been growing stronger for 300 years, and Minji could already feel the darkness calling to her. Through the weakening seals, the next morning brought signs that made both dragon and guardian uneasy. As they prepared to leave the mountain cave, Minji's pendant began to pulse faster than before. The blue light it gave off was no longer steady. Instead, it flickered like a candle in the wind. Something is wrong, Minji said, pressing her hand to the crystal. The heart of binding is trying to warn me. Yukon stepped outside the cave and looked toward the desert. What he saw made his blood run cold. In 3 places across the vast wasteland, columns of black smoke rose into the morning sky. But this was not ordinary smoke. It twisted and moved against the wind, reaching toward the heavens like grasping fingers. The void tears are opening, he said grimly. The prison seals are failing faster than we thought. They flew toward the buried city as quickly as Rukin's powerful wings could carry them. As they traveled, more signs of the growing darkness appeared below. Patches of desert sand had turned black as coal. Strange creatures moved across these dark areas, things that looked like twisted shadows given form. Void spawn, Minji explained as they watched the creatures from above. They are born from the cracks in reality. The weaker the seals become, the more of them appear. One of the shadow creatures looked up at them as they passed overhead. Its eyes were holes filled with swirling darkness. When it opened its mouth to screech at them, they could see that it had no tongue, no teeth, just an empty space that seemed to pull light into it. Rukin flew higher to avoid the creatures. How long do we have before the seals fail completely? Minji checked her pendant again. The pulsing had become even faster. Days, maybe hours, I cannot tell for certain. The magic is becoming unstable. They reached the ruins of the ancient city by midday. From above, it looked like nothing more than broken stones scattered across the sand. But Rukin knew better. He landed near what appeared to be a pile of rubble, but was actually the entrance to the underground city. The real city is below, he told Minji as he set her down gently. Your ancestors built it deep in the earth to hide it from enemies. The surface ruins are just a disguise. Minji placed her hand on a certain stone in the rubble pile. The pendant around her neck flared with light, and the stone began to glow with the same blue radiance. Ancient symbols appeared on its surface, symbols that matched the tattoos on her arms. Blood of the guardians, keeper of the ancient ways, she spoke in the old language. I seek entry to the sacred halls. The stone sank into the ground, and the rubble around it began to move. Pieces of broken rock rolled aside to reveal a stairway carved from solid crystal. Blue light emanated from the walls, showing the way down into the depths. Stay close, Minji warned as they descended the stairs. The city's defenses are still active. They will attack anything they do not recognize as friend. The stairway led down for what felt like miles. The walls were covered with carvings that told the history of the ethereal people. Yukon recognized many of the scenes. Here was the great war against the void creatures. There was the discovery of the prison magic. And there, carved with special care, was the final battle where the ethereal people had sacrificed themselves to save all life. At the bottom of the stairs, they emerged into a vast underground chamber. The buried city spread out before them, its crystal spires reaching up toward the stone ceiling. Buildings glowed with soft light, and moving walkways carried glowing orbs of energy from place to place. But something was wrong. Many of the lights were flickering or had gone out completely. Cracks ran through some of the crystal structures, and in the distance they could hear a sound like breaking glass mixed with screaming wind. The city is dying, Minji said sadly. As the seals weaken, the power that keeps this place alive fades away. They made their way through the empty streets toward the center of the city. Yukon marveled at the beauty of the ancient architecture, even as he mourned its decay. The ethereal people had been master builders as well as powerful magicians. At the heart of the city stood the greatest structure of all. It was a massive tower made entirely of crystal that rose from the floor to the ceiling of the great chamber. But this crystal was different from the others. It was darker, and strange shadows moved within it. The void prison, Minji whispered, and look, the cracks are spreading. Indeed, hairline fractures covered the surface of the great crystal. Some of them glowed with a sickly green light, and through the largest crack they could see something that made them both step backward in fear. An eye. A huge red eye that burned with hatred and malice. It was looking directly at them. She knows we are here, Minji said, her voice barely audible. The Void Empress Nara can see us through the cracks. As if responding to her words, the eye blinked. When it opened again, the pupil had changed. Instead of being round, it was now shaped like a keyhole. And through that keyhole shape, they could see more than just an eye. They could see 4 arms ending in claws that could cut through reality itself. They could see a mouth filled with teeth like black diamonds. They could see a form that was both beautiful and terrible, wrapped in shadows that moved like living things, the void. Empress pressed one of her clawed hands against the inside of the crystal. Where she touched it, the prison cracked a little more. Soon, her voice echoed from within the crystal, speaking in a language older than words. Soon I will be free. And when I'm little guardian, I will devour your world first. I will save you for last so you can watch everything you love turn to ash. Minji's pendant grew so hot against her chest that she had to pull it away from her skin. The symbols on her arms began to burn with painful light. The binding is breaking down. She gasped. We have to act now or it will be too late. You can move to stand between Minji and the prison. His scales bristled with protective magic. What do we need to do? Minji ran to a control panel made of crystal and metal near the base of the tower. Her hands flew over the ancient controls, pressing symbols and turning dials that had not been touched for centuries. The great sealing machine, she said, as lights began to flicker to life around them. It can reinforce the prison, but it needs enormous amounts of power. In the old days, 100 guardians would link their magic together to run it. She looked at the machine's displays and her face went pale. The power requirements are massive. It would take the life force of at least 2 guardians to create a temporary seal, to make it permanent. She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. To make it permanent, what? Ryukin demanded. Minji met his golden eyes with her own dark ones. To make it permanent, someone would have to merge their soul with the crystal matrix. They would become part of the prison itself, giving their life to keep Nora locked away forever? Another crack appeared in the crystal prison. This one was larger than the others, and black void energy began to seep out of it like smoke. We are running out of time, Ryukin said. Whatever we are going to do, we must do it now. But even as he spoke, they both knew the terrible truth. They were only 2 against a force that had once required the sacrifice of an entire civilization to contain. And with each passing moment, the Void Empress grew stronger while they grew weaker. The eye in the crystal blinked again, and this time the Empress laughed. It was a sound like dying stars and screaming children. Too late, little ones, she whispered, far too late. As the Void Empress laughed within her cracking prison, something changed in Ryukin's mind. Memories that had been buried for thousands of years began to surface like bubbles rising from the depths of a dark lake. He staggered backward, his massive form shaking as the forgotten past crashed over him. Ryukin, what is happening? Minji asked, rushing to his side. The dragon's golden eyes had turned white, and he was making sounds of pain deep in his throat. Images flashed through his mind. A young man with kind eyes and strong hands standing in this very chamber 3,000 years ago. The man wore the same symbols that decorated Minji's clothes, and around his neck hung a pendant identical to the one she carried. Jinwoo, Ryukin whispered, the name coming back to him like a half-remembered dream. The first guardian who called me here. The memories came faster now. He saw himself as he had been then, smaller and younger, newly awakened from the deep sleep of dragonkind. Jinwoo had found him in the northern mountains and spoken the ancient words of summoning. Great dragon of the old magic, Jinwoo had said, I call upon you in the name of all living things. A darkness comes that will devour the stars themselves. Will you help us fight it? And Ryukin had said yes. Not because he had to, but because something in the young man's voice had touched his heart. The ethereal people were facing their greatest enemy, and they needed all the help they could get. I remember now, Ryukin said to Minji, his voice heavy with emotion. I was not just a guardian of the desert. I was created to be something more. He turned to look at the cracking prison, and his eyes blazed with golden fire. Your ancestor. Jinwoo and the other ethereal leaders did not just ask for my help, they changed me. They used their most powerful magic to bind my life force to their bloodline. Minji stared at him. What do you mean? I mean that I am not just a dragon anymore. Ryukin explained. I am a fusion of dragon magic and ethereal technology. They made me immortal, gave me powers beyond what any normal dragon could possess. In return, I swore an oath that can never be broken. The memories were clearer now. He saw the great ritual chamber where dozens of ethereal mages had worked for 7 days and 7 nights. They had woven spells into his very bones, carved magical symbols into his scales, and bound his soul to theirs with chains of starlight. I swore to protect the guardian bloodline until the end of time, he said. Every guardian who has ever lived has been under my protection, even when they did not know it. Your grandfather Do-yeon, your father Sunho, and now you. Minji's pendant pulsed brighter, responding to his words. That is why you found me in the desert. The magic called you to me. Yes, Ryukin said. And it is why I will not let you face this alone. He moved closer to the control panel where Minji had been working. His claws, which were normally too large for such delicate work, began to change. The magic within him reshaped them, making them smaller and more precise. What are you doing? Minji asked. I am remembering what I was truly made for, Ryukin replied. He began to work alongside her at the control panel, his transformed claws dancing over the ancient symbols with practiced skill. I helped build this machine, Minji. I helped create the prison that holds the Void Empress. The machine began to hum with power as they worked together. Lights that had been dark for centuries flickered back to life. The crystal spires around the chamber began to glow more brightly, but even as they worked, the cracks in the prison grew larger. The Void Empress pressed both hands against the crystal now, and her forearms were becoming visible through the largest fracture. It is not enough, Minji said desperately. Even with both of us working together, we cannot generate enough power to repair the seals completely. Ryukin stopped working and looked at her. In her face he saw the same determination that had driven Jinwoo 3,000 years ago. The same courage that had led the ethereal people to sacrifice everything to save the galaxy. Tell me about the permanent seal, he said quietly. The one that requires a soul to merge with the crystal matrix, Minji hesitated. It is called the final binding. One person must give up their life completely, becoming part of the prison itself. Their consciousness becomes the guardian of the seal, watching over it for all eternity. And this would stop her permanently. Yes, Minji said. But the cost. Whoever performs the final binding would cease to exist as they are now. They would become something else, something between life and death. Ryukin nodded slowly. I understand. No, Minji said, seeing the look in his eyes. I will not let you sacrifice yourself. There has to be another way. Perhaps there is, Ryukin said. But we need time to find it. And time is the one thing we do not have. As if to prove his point, another massive crack appeared in the prison. This one split the crystal from top to bottom, and void energy poured out like black water. The temperature in the chamber dropped, and frost began to form on the ancient machinery. She is almost free, Minji whispered. The Void Empress pressed her face against the largest crack. Half of her features were now visible, one burning red eye, part of her mouth with its diamond black teeth, and the edge of one horn that curved back from her forehead. I can taste the air of freedom, she hissed. Soon I will stretch my limbs in the light of dying stars. And you, little dragon, you will be the first to feed my hunger. But Ryukin was no longer listening to her threats. He was studying the control panel with new understanding. The ancient symbols were telling him something important, something he had not noticed before. Minji, he said urgently, look at this. He pointed to a section of the control panel that neither of them had touched. The symbols there were different from the others, more complex and intertwined. What is it? She asked. It is a backup system, Ryukin said with growing excitement. A failsafe that the ancient builders included in case the primary seals ever failed. Minji leaned closer to study the symbols. As she did, the tattoos on her arms began to glow brighter. I can read it, she said in amazement. It is written in the old Guardian script that my grandfather taught me. She traced the symbols with her finger, speaking their meaning aloud. In the hour of greatest darkness, when all seems lost, the true guardian shall find the path that others cannot see. What does it mean? Ryukin asked. Minji continued reading. The seals can be renewed not through sacrifice alone, but through the willing bond between dragon and guardian. As we are two kinds made one purpose, so can our power become one force. They looked at each other with new hope. Perhaps there was another way after all. Perhaps they did not have to choose between saving the world and losing their lives, but they would have to act quickly. The Void Empress was running out of patience, and the prison was running out of time. Before Minji and Ryukin could fully understand the backup system, the ground beneath their feet began to shake. The crystal prison groaned like a living thing in pain, and the largest crack suddenly split wide open. No, Minji gasped. We are too late. The Void Empress Nara stepped through the opening in her crystal cage. She was more terrible than either of them had imagined. She stood as tall as Ryukin, but where the dragon radiated warmth and life. She was a creature of pure darkness and hunger. Her skin was black as the space between stars, and it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Her 4 arms moved independently, each one ending in claws that looked like they could cut through reality itself. Her face was beautiful in the way that a perfect storm is beautiful, deadly and mesmerizing, but it was her eyes that were the most frightening. They were holes in her head that led to the void between worlds. Looking into them was like staring into the death of everything that had ever lived. Free, she whispered, and her voice made the crystal structures around them crack. After so long in that cramped prison, I am finally free. She stretched her 4 arms wide, and where her claws touched the air, it tore like fabric. Through the tears, they could see glimpses of other worlds, planets covered in ice, suns going dark, entire star systems being swallowed by spreading darkness. Do you see? She asked, turning her terrible gaze on Minji and Ryukin. Do you see what I have done to other worlds while you kept me locked away? I have learned to extend my power across the void. I have been feeding even while imprisoned. Ryukin stepped in front of Minji, his scales blazing with protective magic. You will not touch her, monster. I swore an oath to protect the Guardian bloodline, and I will keep that oath even if it costs me my life. The Void Empress laughed, and the sound made icicles form on the walls. Oh, little dragon, you think your oath means something to me? You think your ancient magic can stand against the hunger that devours galaxies? She raised one clawed hand, and void energy gathered around it like black fire. Let me show you how powerless you really are. The battle that followed shook the very foundations of the buried city. Nara hurled bolts of void energy that could unmake anything they touched. Ryukin answered with dragon fire that burned hotter than the cores of stars. When their powers clashed, the air itself caught fire and waves of force rippled outward, but Ryukin was fighting a losing battle. For every attack he made, Nara countered with 2 of her own. Her 4 arms moved in patterns that hurt to watch, weaving spells of destruction that no single opponent could defend against. You cannot win, she taunted as she drove him back with a barrage of void bolts. I have fed on the death of 100 worlds. I am stronger now than when your precious ethereal people first imprisoned me. Minji watched the battle with growing desperation. She tried to activate the city's defense systems, but most of them had been damaged when the prison broke. The few weapons that still worked barely slowed the Void Empress down. Then she remembered her grandfather's lessons. Do-Yun had taught her that the greatest strength of the Guardian bloodline was not their magic or their ancient weapons. It was their ability to think differently, to find solutions that others could not see. While Ryukin and Nara fought, Minji ran to the control panel of the sealing machine. She began to input commands, not to attack the Void Empress directly, but to do something else entirely. What are you doing, child? Nara called out as she noticed Minji's frantic work. Do you think your little machine can hurt me now that I am free? I am not trying to hurt you, Minji replied, her fingers flying over the ancient controls. I'm trying something my ancestors never thought of. Instead of using the sealing machine to strengthen the prison, she began to reverse its function. The machine hummed and sparked as she forced it to work in ways it was never designed for. You are trying to redirect my own power, Nara realized with surprise. Clever little guardian. But you do not understand the forces you are playing with. The Void Empress turned her full attention to Minji, raising all four arms to strike her down with overwhelming force. But Rukin threw himself between them. Taking the full brunt of her attack, the dragon's roar of pain echoed through the crystal chamber as void energy tore through his scales and flesh. He crashed into one of the city's tall spires, bringing tons of crystal raining down around him. Ryukin? Minji screamed. The dragon struggled to his feet, but his left wing was badly torn and black void energy was eating away at his side like acid. He was hurt too badly to continue fighting. So brave, Nara mocked, so noble, and so pointless. Watch now, little guardian, as I finish your protector. Then I will deal with you. She began to gather void energy for a final attack, energy enough to tear Ryukin apart completely. The darkness around her hands grew so intense that it began to pull in light from across the chamber, but Minji was not watching in helpless despair. She was making calculations, timing the energy flows from the machine she had reprogrammed. Her grandfather had taught her that every spell had a moment of vulnerability, and she was waiting for the right instant. Now, she whispered and pressed the final control. The sealing machine erupted with power. But instead of trying to contain the Void Empress, it began to feed her own energy back into her. Every void bolt she had fired, every spell she had cast, every bit of darkness she had summoned was suddenly reversed and sent back to its source. Nara's eyes widened in shock as her own power turned against her. The void energy she had gathered for her final attack began to tire at her instead of flowing outward. Impossible, she snarled. You cannot use my own hunger against me. Maybe not, Minji said, sweat streaming down her face as she fought to control the machine. But I can make you too hungry. I can make you so hungry that you start to devour yourself. The feedback loop was working. Every time Nara tried to use her power, the machine turned it back on her. The void energy that was her strength became her weakness, eating away at her from the inside, but the strain was enormous. The ancient machine was never built for this kind of work, and it was beginning to break apart. Sparks flew from the control panel, and warning lights flashed throughout the chamber. The machine cannot hold much longer, Minji gasped. I need someone to stabilize the energy flow, or the feedback loop will collapse, Ryukin understood. Even wounded and bleeding, he dragged himself to the machine and placed his claws on the crystal power core. Dragon magic flowed into the ancient mechanisms, giving them the strength to continue. Together, he said to Minji. Dragon and guardian, just as it was meant to be. The Void Empress realized what was happening, but it was too late. The feedback loop had grown too strong for her to break. Her own boundless hunger was turning inward, and she was beginning to consume herself from within. This is not over, she screamed as void energy tore holes in her perfect form. Even if you destroy this body, I exist in many dimensions. I will return, and when I do, I will make you suffer for 1,000 lifetimes. But her threats were growing weaker. The feedback was accelerating, and she was unraveling at the most basic level of existence. Minji looked at the monster who had threatened to devour all life, and she felt no pity, only determination. You will not return, she said firmly, because we are humanity, and we do not give up. The feedback loop continued to tear at the Void Empress, but even as her form began to unravel, she was not finished. With a scream of pure rage, she threw all of her remaining power into one final attack. Not at the machine that was destroying her, but at Minji herself. If I am to die, Nara shrieked, then I will take the last guardian with me. Without her, there will be no one left to stop me when I return. 4 massive bolts of void energy, each one crackling with the power to unmake reality itself, shot toward Minji. She was standing at the control panel, unable to move without breaking the delicate connection that kept the feedback loop stable. Time seemed to slow. Came.She could see the deadly energy approaching her, could feel the cold touch of oblivion reaching for her heart. In that moment, she thought of her grandfather Do-yeon, who had spent his life preparing her for this moment. She thought of all the generations of guardians who had given everything to keep the darkness at bay, but most of all, she thought of something her grandfather had told her when she was very young. The greatest strength of humanity, he had said, is not that we are the strongest or the smartest or the most magical. It is that we refuse to accept defeat, even when defeat seems certain. The void bolts were almost upon her when Rukin threw himself forward. The wounded dragon spread his torn wings wide, shielding Came.She with his own body. The void energy struck him with tremendous force, and he cried out in agony as the darkness ate through his scales and into his flesh. "No!" Came.She screamed. "Rukin, get away from the machine!" "You are hurt too badly," but the dragon held his position. "I will not let her hurt you," he gasped through his pain. "I swore an oath, and I will keep it." The void energy was spreading through Rukin's body like poison, but something unexpected was happening. Instead of destroying him, it was being absorbed into the dragon magic that flowed through his veins. His unique nature, the fusion of dragon power and ethereal technology that had been created 3,000 years ago, was turning the void energy into something else. "The binding," Came.She whispered, understanding suddenly. "The ancient spell that made you immortal. It is not just protecting you from the void energy, it is transforming it." She was right. The void energy that should have killed Rukin was being converted into pure magical power by the ancient spells woven into his very being. And that power was flowing into the sealing machine, making it stronger than it had ever been. The feedback loop that had been straining to contain the Void Empress suddenly surged with new strength. Nara felt the change immediately. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice now high with panic. "What is happening to my power?" "We are using your own nature against you," Came.She replied, her hand steady on the controls even as tears ran down her face for Rukin's pain. "You are a creature of pure hunger, pure consumption. But hunger can be turned inward. Consumption can consume the consumer." The machine was now running far beyond its original design limits, powered by the converted void energy that Rukin was. Feeding into it, the feedback loop had become a spiral, growing stronger with each moment, turning more and more of Nara's power back against her. But Came.She knew they needed something more. The Void Empress was a creature that existed across multiple dimensions. Even if they destroyed her physical form here, she could regenerate herself in another reality. They needed to attack her across all dimensions at once. That was when Came.She remembered the most important lesson her grandfather had ever taught her. "Magic is not about following the old rules," Do-yeon had said. "Magic is about understanding the universe so well that you can write new rules." She began to modify the machine one final time, not following the ancient programming, but creating something entirely new. She used her human creativity to combine dragon magic, ethereal technology, and void energy in a way that had never been attempted before. "What are you doing now, child?" Nara asked, and for the first time there was real fear in her voice. "I am doing something my ancestors never thought of," Came.She replied. "I am not trying to imprison you or seal you away. I am erasing you completely." The machine began to resonate with a new frequency, one that reached across the barriers between dimensions. Wherever the Void Empress existed, in whatever reality she had hidden parts of herself, the resonance found her and began to unmake her at the most fundamental level. "Impossible," Nara gasped. "You are just a human child. You cannot have this kind of power." "You are right," Came.She said calmly. "I am just a human, but that is exactly why I can do this. You understand hunger and consumption and the desire to devour everything. But you do not understand the one thing that makes humans special." She looked directly into the Void Empress's terrible eyes without flinching. "We do not give up, ever. When faced with the impossible, we do not accept it. We Find another way. When told that something cannot be done, we do it anyway. When confronted with certain death, we choose to live. The resonance reached its peak. Across every dimension where the Void Empress existed, her form began to dissolve. She was being unwritten from reality itself, erased not just from this world, but from all worlds. You may destroy me, Nara said, her voice growing faint as she faded from existence. But there are other threats in the darkness between stars, other hungers that will come for your world. Let them come, Minji replied firmly. Humanity will be ready, we always are. With a final scream that echoed across dimensions, the Void Empress Nara was gone. Not imprisoned, not sealed away, but completely and permanently erased from existence. The ancient machine powered down, its work finally complete. The crystal chamber fell silent except for the sound of Ryuken's labored breathing. Minji rushed to the dragon's side. The void energy had left terrible wounds, but he was alive. More than that, the ancient magic that bound him to the guardian bloodline was healing him, slowly but surely. Is it over? He asked weakly. It is over, Minji confirmed. She is gone forever. As they sat together in the crystal chamber, something wonderful began to happen. The damaged structures of the buried city started to repair themselves, but they were not returning to their original form. Instead, they were becoming something new, something that combined the ancient wisdom of the ethereal people with human innovation in dragon magic. Light began to filter down from above as the city rose toward the surface. The desert sand parted to make way for crystal spires that reached toward the sky like fingers of hope. The ancient technology, no longer needed to maintain a prison, transformed itself into something that could nurture and protect instead of just contain. Minji stood at the observation deck of the highest tower and looked out over the transformed landscape. The black patches where void spawn had roamed were green now, with plants that had not grown in the desert for 1,000 years. Water flowed in streams that reflected the light of the crystal city. What will you do now? Ryuken asked as he joined her. His wounds were healing well, and his scales gleamed in the afternoon sun. I will teach, Minji replied. I will find others who can learn the ancient ways, but I will teach them to think as humans think, to question the old rules and make new ones when necessary. She looked at her dragon companion and smiled. And what about you? Your oath is fulfilled. You are free to go wherever you wish. Ryuken considered this for a moment, then shook his great head. I think I will stay. After 3,000 years of solitude, I have remembered what it means to have a friend. Besides, if you are going to teach others, you will need someone to help protect them. Together, they watched the sun set over their transformed world. The desert was still there, but it was no longer a place of death. It was a place of new beginnings, where the wisdom of the past could grow into the hope of the future. And in the distance, they could see small groups of people approaching the Crystal City. Word was already spreading that the ancient magic had returned, that there was a place where the old knowledge could be learned and new wonders could be created. Minji smiled. The age of the guardians was over, but the age of the teachers was just beginning. And with Ryuken by her side, she was ready to help humanity reach for the stars.